Welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're live on the POSTCAST following the Timberwolves loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm joined by Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North. We're going to break down the Timberwolves loss. The Locked On Wolves POSTCAST starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm joined by Marney Gellner from Bally Sports North. We're going to talk about the Wolves' loss to the Sixers here on Tuesday night. And Marney, the Wolves hung in early against the 76ers. Obviously, Philadelphia is a really good team. They've been playing really well lately. They actually won just 24 hours prior, Monday night. But a combination of kind of an offensive outage from anyone not named Anthony Edwards on the Wolves, and I mean, Joel Embiid being Joel Embiid, that was kind of midway through the second quarter on. It was just kind of too much for the Wolves.
Yeah, the second quarter was not a good one at all. The quarter score was 34-18, and the Wolves had led after one quarter. They were up 3, and then just things turned right before halftime. Philly had that 15-0 run that Ant finally ended when he got that hoop late right before halftime, but that kind of was it. They never really made it a game after that. Philly was pretty good tonight.
Yeah, it was 43-43 midway through the second quarter. And I guess the quick math would be that the Timberwolves were outscored like, what is that? Like 74 to like 52 or something the rest of the way, or 51. So yeah, midway second quarter on, and it was a lot of Joel Embiid. Of course, he scored 39. He scored 42 on Monday. He only had 9 free throw attempts when, last time against the Wolves, I think he had 20 and he had 9, or I think he had 18. He had 20 on Monday. So the Wolves, I mean, they competed again. It was close early. It was just kind of, no matter who is guarding Embiid, whether it was Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson at times, the Wolves tried doubling him everywhere. They even tried doubling him basically at the elbows, like in the middle of the floor, which is a really hard thing to do. And it didn't matter. I mean, he shot the ball extremely well. He made all 4 of his 3-point attempts. And when he was out there, which wasn't very often, the Timberwolves didn't, it clearly was in the game plan to like make him shoot the 3. I mean, he made all 4 of his attempts. He made all 9 of his free throw attempts. And Chris Finch said after the game, he's the MVP of the league. I mean, it's got to be either him or Jokic, but it's another conversation for another day. But Embiid was just phenomenal in this game, and the Wolves just simply didn't have an answer for him defensively.
They sure didn't, and he was playing on the second night. They all were. Second night of a back-to-back for the Sixers, and Embiid played, 36, 38 minutes last night. He didn't even have to play in the fourth quarter tonight. That's how effective he was. His third quarter alone, Embiid had 22 points. The entire Wolves team had 23 points.
Wow.
In the third quarter. I mean, he absolutely dominated, and he played 10 and a half minutes. The Wolves, they filled up all 12 minutes of that third quarter and only had 1 more point than Joel Embiid. He had 22 of Philly's 29. So that just tells you how dominant he was and how set Philly was on just letting him work, letting him cook, do what you want to do, just get him the ball. We'll figure it out the rest of the way. You just get us there, big fella. That's kind of what it looked like. And Joel Embiid was every bit of that. He was dominant tonight.
Yeah, and on the flip side for the Wolves, they didn't really get anything from anyone that wasn't Anthony Edwards. Ant had 32 points. It was actually a pretty well-rounded Anthony Edwards game. He shot the ball well from the field. He was aggressive. He had, I think, 22 at halftime and was, I mean, rightfully, really the only player the Sixers were scheming to try and stop. I mean, there were only 2 other players on the Wolves that scored in double figures. No other starters scored more than 7 points for the Wolves. Prince had 13 off the bench. Nas had 11, but both of them hit double figures late in the second half, almost closing in on garbage time there. I mean, it's not positive to look at the starting lineup. See one guy with 32, nobody else with more than 7. Jaden McDaniels had only 3 points in this game. Rudy had just 6 and 9. And when you look at this kind of this build matchup of all-star bigs, and Embiid has, what did he have? 39 and 7, and you have Gobert with 6 and 9. The Wolves were just unable to give Ant any help, and give the Sixers credit. They're a good defensive team. But the Timberwolves just nobody even attempted more than 7 shots in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards attempted 24. No one else attempted more than 7. I guess credit the Sixers for withstanding a good game from Ant and really nobody else.
And it was a combination of all of that. The starters just didn't have it tonight. They weren't very good. I made a note in the fourth quarter when Naz Reid made a basket at the 10:49 mark. That put him into double figures at 11. And let's see, that is where he finished the game too. So he goes into double figures at the 10:49 mark of the fourth quarter. And that's the first time the Wolves had any player even get to double figures besides Ant. And as you said, they only finished with the 3 players in double figures. Torian Prince was the other one. And you mentioned the shot attempts by the starters. How about the made baskets? So Ant had 12 field goals made. Jaden McDaniels had 1. Mike Conley had 1. Rudy Gobert had 2. And Kyle Anderson had 3. And that's it from the starters. 7 combined made baskets the entire game outside of Anthony Edwards. So that's just not enough. It's not going to get it done. Luckily, that's not a theme. That's not something that we've got to try to figure out. This is always happening. They do have a little bit of a drop off after Ant. That is clear. That is something that they really missed from Karl Anthony Towns, but it has not been something that's plagued this team. So let's hope this is just a glitch. We'll figure it out moving forward.
Tonight's postcast is presented by our friends at FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is come and gone. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and threes drained. Timberwolves' next game is Friday against Brooklyn. I'm sure there's a line there already, so go check that out at FanDuel. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you look at the team stats in this game, a lot of it's actually even. The Timberwolves shot the ball. I mean, the 3-point shooting obviously was kind of the big one. Both teams got to the line. You know, the Sixers got there 23 times. The Wolves shot 21 free throws. The Sixers shot the ball much better at the line, which free throw shooting has been a recurring issue for the Wolves here lately. But the biggest discrepancy in this game was rebounding. The Timberwolves only had 34 rebounds in this game. The Sixers had 54. The Wolves were a -20 on the glass, and they actually won points in the paint. The Wolves did. But they weren't able to, and the Sixers aren't a great rebounding team either. The Wolves just weren't able to really even hold their own on the glass. And it's just another category where not everybody came to the party.
Yeah, the rebounding was pretty significant in this game. A full 20 was the margin, 54-34. Nobody in double figures in rebounding for the Wolves. And Tobias Harris had 14 for Philly. I mean, that's a big number. Gobert got his 9, Ant had 7. But that, I mean, to be out rebounded by 20 is not a great night. But I mean, I'm hoping that this is, I mean, let's add it to the category of outliers that we're hoping for in this game, because it certainly has not been something we've seen. But if you want to figure out the reasons why the Wolves were down by 20 for most of this game, let's add that to the list. And maybe that's just the Joel Embiid effect and what he does to bigs and to people in the lane, and we'll chalk it up to that. But it was not a good night for the Wolves. It just wasn't a very physical and impassioned kind of night. And I'm not sure if that was kind of sucked out because Philly took such command out of this game and he just kind of took the life out of this team. I'm not sure, chicken and the egg, which came first, but it was certainly a factor. And I think it showed up mostly in the rebounding category.
Yeah, and like ultimately, if we're summarizing this game, I just don't know how much you take from it. It's disappointing, obviously. James Harden doesn't play. The Sixers are on the road at the tail end of I think it's 5-game road trip, and second night of a back-to-back. Like, this should have been a closer game. The Timberwolves definitely there were a lot of issues, as we've already talked about, but the Sixers are a really good team. Joel Embiid's one of the best, top, 2 or 3 players in the entire league at this point. The Wolves still don't have Karl Anthony Towns. I think my biggest takeaways from this game were the lack of secondary scoring, obviously, the lack of, and Ant only had 1 assist. We should mention that. The Sixers were trying to force the ball out of Ant's hands, and they did. He made a couple of really nice passes. I mean, there's one he dropped a pass on the baseline. Kyle Anderson 6 feet in front of the basket, and Anderson just missed a gimme. There were a couple of missed wide open threes, actually kind of late second quarter when the Sixers were making their initial run to build a double-digit lead that they held on to the rest of the game. there were certainly some missed shots. So the one assist isn't only on Ant. I mean, his teammates have to make shots for him to get assists, but the Wolves need to kind of continue to cultivate Ant as a playmaker, which we've seen a little less of since Mike Conley came into the fold. But that to me is one of the takeaways is like, what do you do with who's your next scorer? If Rudy's not scoring in a particular game and he's got a tough matchup, who's going to score some baskets? Is it going to be McDaniels? Is it going to be Conley? Is it going to be somebody off the bench? And they've gotten, during this stretch of strong play, they've gotten, maybe a little more than expected from Conley and a little more than expected from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Who's it going to be consistently to step up until Karl-Anthony Towns comes back? And then, I mean, that's really the biggest thing, because I don't think anything the Sixers did, like Tyrese Maxey's really good. I don't think the Wolves on-ball defense was horrific. It was really more just, Embiid and Maxey. So I think, to me, it's the offense and it's, again, rebounding were probably my biggest takeaways overall from this one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either of those. And I'm just reading some of the quotes from Chris Finch after the game. And I feel like this one kind of summarizes this game. He said, there are going to be nights like this. We're not going to overreact.
Yeah.
So you and I, Ben, can sit here and pick apart rebounding was an issue. Secondary scoring was an issue. But as we've even said a couple of times, you just got to take this one. Hopefully you can flush this one, because it really is not a sign of the way the team has played. It certainly raises some flags of, okay, if this team gets to a playoff series and they are playing someone physical and big like Embiid, how do we counter that? If this game is an indication that we don't have that, if we have a game where a handful of players are off, or you have hopefully just 2 or 3, but if they're off, who is that person that steps up when we can't rely on a McDaniels or a Kyle Anderson or Mike Conley when they have an off night? So yes, it's fair to say that this game raised some questions, but it's not fair to say that this game is indicative of some bigger problems that we've seen boil up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And next up, I mean, the Wolves still only play 2 games in the next 6 days. They have this weird kind of play, have 2 nights off, play, have 2 nights off, and they get 2 nights off, and then they play Brooklyn on Friday night.
Brooklyn. Yep.
Brooklyn has Milwaukee Thursday night. So they get the Nets on the second night of a back-to-back, a road back-to-back for the opponent. It's just another opportunity for the Wolves to, take advantage of a rest advantage. And we've talked a lot about how difficult the schedule is down the stretch for the Wolves. But these last couple, like, you have a rest advantage. It's a team. I mean, Brooklyn's playing well. They just won again tonight. So they've won 3 consecutive. They won at Houston, I guess, but they also won at Boston last weekend. So Brooklyn's playing okay right now, and it's not going to be an easy game for the Wolves. But I think it's really important, because once you have that, you go on the road at Atlanta Monday, and you have that weird 1-game road trip. So I think it's really important to at least play well against a solid opponent in the Brooklyn Nets on Friday.
Agreed, especially when you have a game like this and you don't play again for a few days. That's the first thing you want to do, is come out and shake this one off. And sometimes the best thing about the NBA is, boom, you're playing the next night. You can flush it. But the Wolves, maybe the best thing for them is to have a couple of days of practice right now. Their schedule is so bizarre. They went into the All-Star break having played 61 games. I have never seen that. No team had played more than the Wolves. And now coming out of it, they have these random 2-day break. And it had been, it seems like forever that they've had a chance to breathe. And now they have these multiple spots to breathe. It's a very strange schedule. No complaints, just saying it's quirky, and every team has these little glitches here and there. So let's hope that it's a good thing for the Wolves. Let's hope that, tomorrow would be Wednesday and Thursday, good practice days to fix whatever needs to be fixed or address what needs to be addressed. Boom, you come out Friday, solid game against Brooklyn. Now we're right back on track. That's the way you have to look at it after you play a game like this.
Timberwolves are back in action Friday night. We will be back in action as well on the postcast. Of course, we go live after every Wolves game on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. You can also listen to the audio if you can't catch it live on any audio platform. Wherever you listen to Locked On Wolves, you can find all the postcasts as well. So again, we'll be live Friday night after Wolves Nets. It's a 7 p.m. Central tip. A big thank you for listening to the show tonight. A big thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.